Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the July 14th, 2022 meeting of Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Dale Vaughn. I am the chair of the commission. I'd like to remind everyone, members to turn on their microphones when speaking, and also to silence your phones and other electronics. I'm going to go ahead and start off with introductions, and we'll start with the council liaison.
Mike Lester, City Council Liaison.
Trika Young, alternative.
Jacob Robinette, alternative.
Emily Fretwell.
Penny Quigg. Bunny Tricky Cotton.
Lisa Dittmer.
Hank Vogt.
Courtney Bliss, City Planner.
Eric Barron, Planning Manager.
Sonny Sanders, Director of Planning and Protective Services.
Dustin Birch, Associate City Attorney.
The city code authorizes 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Alternates are designated to vote upon absence or disqualification of regular members. A quorum of 5 members or alternates is necessary to conduct business. I declare that a quorum is present. The following regular members that are absent this evening is Spencer Hochfeld, Blake Marcus, and Greg Butler. Are there any members who are disqualified from voting on any agenda item? Seeing none. The voting members are as follows: Emily Fretwell, Penny Quigg, Greg, basically everybody that just said their name, including all alternates.
Everyone present plus all alternates.
Got it. Okay. Call for cases. Case number P2207007, 203 East Dunklin rezoning from C2 to MU1. I know, I always read that in.
Yeah, it's just a call to make sure there's someone present to represent that case, and we do have property owner present.
Are there any requests for continuance?
No, we haven't received any requests.
Are there any requests to reorder the agenda?
No.
No. Courtney, will you please read the format of the hearing and order of testimony?
I'd like to briefly describe the procedures of the commission. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so please step to the microphone when you speak and give your name and address for the record. The standard order of each case is as follows. After introduction of the request by city staff, the applicant or their consultant will provide information on the request. The opening presentation by the applicant shall be limited to 10 minutes unless additional time is granted by the commission. The applicant shall have an additional 3 minutes for closing testimony if requested. We will then ask to hear from supporters of the request. We will then ask to hear from opponents of the request. We will then ask to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on the request. Testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each unless additional time is granted by the commission. City staff will then make their recommendations on the request. In order to reduce the time necessary to hear an application, references to printed materials, including staff reports and applicable findings, shall not be read into the record unless directed by the commission. The commission will then close testimony from the floor. The commission will then discuss the proposal, then publicly make its determination with reasons. The form of motion shall be positive. That is, that the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented or with modifications, stipulations, or conditions. A final vote will be taken with ayes in favor and nays opposed. The chair shall announce the results of the vote, specifying the number of votes cast in favor and the number of votes cast against. The following documents are entered as exhibits for all items under consideration at this meeting: the City Code of the City of Jefferson as amended, the Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Map, copies of applications under consideration, a list of property owners to whom notices were sent, the affidavit of the publication of the public notice in the newspaper, copies of drawings, plans, and/or renderings under consideration, letters or memoranda from staff, staff reports, minutes of proceedings, correspondence or other materials submitted by the public or the applicant, rules of procedure for the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. These items are public record and available for inspection through the Department of Planning and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. Please be advised that any items that are presented, distributed, or otherwise received pertaining to the cases under consideration become the property of the Commission. This includes any photographs, drawings, petitions, and letters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Courtney. Okay. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as printed or reordered?
Move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the regular minutes of May 12th, 2022?
Motion to approve the minutes as printed.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. We don't have any communications, correct, from anybody? Okay. All right, Courtney, would you like to present the case number P22007?
The subject property is zoned C2 General Commercial, and it is surrounded by C2 General Commercial as well. There are many, there are residential uses in the area to the south and the north as well. There are commercial uses in the area as well. It is located at the northeast corner of Madison and the intersection of Madison and
we're presenting to you this evening. We held some pretty intensive discussions with the applicant prior to their making application for this to try to educate them up to what the various city plans that have been adopted for this area mean, what these recommendations within these plans are and what they mean, and how those recommendations are meant to guide zoning decisions. Okay. And there's a short way of putting this, and so I'll put it to you, is that basically the city plans call out this area as being intended for a type of mixed use. What specific type? Well, there can be different types of mixed use. Within our zoning code right now, we only have one mixed use district, the MU1 district. It was our intent several years ago, but we have never followed up with an MU2 district. The MU1 district was established at the same time as the Capitol Avenue overlay area was being established, and that district was laid on top of Capitol Avenue at that time. But it was always always the intent to use that mixed-use district in other areas of the city. That mixed-use district allows for a mix of office and multifamily residential uses, including single-family, but then also allowing for, I'll call it lower level or smaller scale retail and service-oriented businesses, such as a small hair salon, or a small retail business. What it does not allow for is restaurants and some of the other more higher traffic type uses. Now, it was our intent to establish, and we still have, a draft version and could proceed with this, establish a mixed-use 2 district with the idea of having that more targeted towards street front commercial areas. And then so, some of the background, the information within our comprehensive plan calls out the need for a street front commercial mixed use type of district. And the plans that Courtney displayed on the screen, she displayed 2 different plans. One of them was the South Side Neighborhood Plan that was adopted in 2017, and then the comprehensive plan that was adopted just last year. And so, these plans call out this area as being intended for mixed use. It, will be upfront that a lot of the thinking has been along the order of a storefront commercial area. And if you think about the Dunklin Street corridor, I think most things that come to mind is that nice storefront commercial area. It's a miniature version of downtown, okay? Well, this particular property happens to be located close to that, but the character of the area, I think, changes once you cross Madison Street, where you're not necessarily that historic downtown feel, yet you still have a mix of different uses. The patchwork quilt that kind of image that Courtney displayed was our land use map. So that was a map showing the different land uses, and it's just a wide spread of different uses in this area. It's not all commercial, and certainly I believe professionally is not a general commercial, an area that you would envision Missouri Boulevard uses being. And so we held a lot of these discussions with the applicant up front, basically to establish that this could be viewed as a spot zoning situation. And so there was one slide where Courtney showed that there's, this is the only property in this area that would be zoned to this mixed-use 1 district. However, we believe at the staff level that this mixed-use 1 district is closer to being what the future land use map of the comprehensive plan intends for the area, and therefore supported by the comprehensive plan. I'll say that I met with the law department. It was Ryan, not Dustin, Ryan Molman. Just to clear that hurdle is like, hey, this is, could be viewed as a spot zoning situation, and described it to him. And his response is, it's not spot zoning, it's seed zoning, meaning that this particular rezoning decision could be, one of several more that need to occur in this area. And so I'm really interested in what the Planning and Zoning Commission thinks. if, if a mixed-use zoning of that scale that I described that was established for Capitol Avenue, a mix of, apartment and lower level commercial uses is appropriate for the for this block of Dunklin Street. And so that's not necessarily what's being presented to you today. This is an applicant, requesting rezoning of this property. But kind of as a, buried behind that is a general indication of should we at the staff level be proposing a rezoning of the rest of the block. I hope that makes sense. I'm happy to answer any questions in that regard. I'd ask that this is an application by a private property owner, and so that is the decision that's in front of you. But if there's guidance in that regard, we'd certainly take it at the staff level.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, you can go ahead. So my question to you, if it wasn't being zoned for mixed use, what is the proper zoning for the property that they're requesting to be done? I mean, what if it's not mixed use? If it's multifamily,
Yeah,
it sounds like.
I think the multifamily district would be a hard one because there are commercial uses in that area. The multifamily versus commercial zoning districts are really built to be for larger areas. You can't really assign them on a lot by lot basis. And so, so I would say that the proper zoning is mixed use, which is what's being proposed. And
So the downtown area is zoned, what, C1 or C2? Or C3?
The downtown area has a C3 zoning, and so it's a zoning district really built for the downtown area.
Right.
It does not permit apartment buildings.
Right. But so the C3 would allow for retail or commercial on the lower level, but then allow apartments up, correct?
All commercial zoning districts allow for that. Okay. And so in any commercial zoning district in the city, you can establish loft apartments.
Mhm.
You can also establish basement apartments, the necessity of our terrain in Jefferson City. But the main level has to be commercial.
Right.
Okay? And so what they are wishing to do, can you go back to the street view? Right there. Okay, and so this is a street.
The good thing about mixed use zoning that way would be that if somebody later on came and wanted to take that apartment and use it for an office or some sort of business, they could do that without having it, right, correct?
That is correct. So the other option they would have is to rezone to one of those multifamily districts, as Bunny alluded to. If they came back later and wanted to reconvert the lower level to commercial, we'd have a new zoning situation. And so that's really not a very good course of action. And so, again, we're back to a mixed use.
Right. And I feel like that area originally, a long time ago, was like a lot of mixed use where there was like a grocery store in that area, and then you had houses and you had commercial businesses, and you kind of had like these little community within that area. So I'm not opposed to that at all. The only thing is that the parking, how does that work? So I see that there's a car parked next to the building, and then I'm assuming that's an easement to get to the back side of it. Does the tenant have access to that back lot? Is that right?
I might leave it to the property owner,
Okay.
to present that and answer questions. I'll still lay out some of their reasoning, behind the choice on what they would like to do here. I believe there might be an easement of some sort there, but yeah.
Okay.
I'll add one other thing. The situation here is, well, Well, it largely arises, and there are other areas of town where there is a mix of different uses that are together. And a lot of that arises from the pyramidal structure of our zoning code for many years. And so the Jefferson City zoning code up until the year 2002 had a pyramidal structure, meaning that within, if you imagine zoning as a pyramid with the more intense zoning districts at the top, and that if you were zoned a certain way, the structure was that you could do anything below that within the pyramid. Okay, that was switched over to what's called an express purpose form of zoning in 2002, listing the different zoning districts and what uses are permitted in them. And it's the pyramidal structure, I will say, is rare these days for municipalities of our size. Most towns have switched to other things because there are conflicts that are created within a pyramidal structure where uses are mixed together. One way of describing it is you have to protect the upper level districts from the lower level uses, and so. But there are multiple areas in our town, and there are multiple areas as identified on our comprehensive plan map that it could be targeted for mixed use zoning. But I'll leave that in unless there are any other questions.
Okay. Does anybody else, any commissioners have any questions for Courtney or the staff? No? Okay. Who would like to present this case? Obviously. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Gretchen Visley. Address is 1310 Moreland Avenue here in Jefferson City at 65101.
So I guess the question was about parking. Is that like a zero lot line? There wasn't much space around it, so I'm assuming it's pretty much like right there.
Well, there are 2 spaces in the front of that building, and then there are 2 spaces on the side there where that gray car is parked.
Got it.
And so there is an easement in between those buildings so people can get back through there to park around back, because there are 2 other buildings behind that building, yeah.
So how, as far as you're doing like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment type thing?
Correct, on each level, yes,
So-
that's the intention.
So obviously not a lot of cars would be there.
That would be my goal.
Right.
Right. Very
So-
limited parking.
So how would you have access to the upper level? Is it they would be able to walk around the back and then go through
Well,
the-
they could park, for the upper level, they could park on the side of the building or in the front of the building.
Got it.
So,
But they would have access to just go around the back
yes,
side of the entrance.
correct, yes, because, the entries are one in the front and one in the back
Got it.
of the building.
Yeah, and that's really all I was curious about. So,
Oh, okay.
Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant? If you have anything to present. I mean,
Sure,
yeah,
sure,
go
I'd
ahead.
love to speak with the committee. Thank you for hearing our request this evening. My husband and I both intended to be here tonight, but he is not feeling well. So I'm here to represent us and our proposal. We've been residents here in Jefferson City for about 30 years, and we've lived here on 3 separate occasions. We've raised our son here. My husband is recently retired, and I work part-time for the Highway Patrol, but we really enjoy living in the capital city. And we've lived in several places here in Jefferson City since we've been here over the past 30 years, and currently live on the east side of town. But about 20 years ago, what we decided to do was purchase a property in the Munichburg area, and which led us to our most current purchase of this property at 203 East Dunklin that we're asking to be rezoned from the C2 to the MU1 designation. So without repeating too much of what's already in our application, which I'm sure you've read, we purchased this property in February of this year with the intention of creating 2 1-bedroom apartments, one on the upper and one on the lower level of the building. And it was kindly brought to our attention that with the C2 zoning, we have to have this commercial frontage in the front of the building. But we really believe that the current C2 zoning for this structure at 203 East Dunklin, it doesn't really make the best possible use of the existing structure. And I can only speak from our own experience and my own experience of owning the property right next door to it at 205 East Dunklin. We've owned that for 20 years, and it contains, that building contains 4 apartments around back and 2 commercial spaces in the front of that building. And so these properties are right next door to each other. So what I've discovered over the past 20 years, it has just been the small residential units seem to be very much in demand in the area, in the Munichburg area. We've been very fortunate to have very many applicants for those apartments when they come available. And in fact, I usually have a waiting list of people that want to rent in those spaces. We rent from students to professionals to legislative liaisons and legislators I've actually had in my units also. Typically, those people stay for several years. And of course, as residents, they're frequenting the local businesses and the restaurants in the Munichburg area, which benefits everyone, of course. However, we found that those commercial spaces at 205 have been very difficult to rent and to find a commercial tenant for. And in fact, right now I have one that just came available, and I'm really not sure how long that's going to take us to get that rented again. But from our past experience, I've had commercial spaces at 205 East Dunklin. It's taken me several years, 2 years or more sometimes, to find an appropriate tenant for those spaces. And the main concern, it seems like, for potential business owners that are looking at these spaces is the parking issue. As you can see, it's pretty limited as far as parking. And even though by code, from what we understand, Eric was very thorough, they both have been very thorough with explaining this whole process to us in the zoning. Under the code, we actually have enough parking because there is on-street parking, and then there's a little lot over there where the dollar store used to be. And I've kind of utilized all of those resources, plus neighbors that have spaces, extra spaces available, but it doesn't seem like business owners really want to park away from their business and walk, and they don't want their customers to do that either. So it's really can be problematic, the parking issue at 205. And so we wanted to overcome that obstacle with buying this property at 203 East Dunklin. And so we met with the city staff and discussed whether options we had here. Rezoning to MU1 came up. And my husband and I really think that this is a better option for this, not only for us as a business investment, because it is a business and we are invested in the Munichburg area. We're willing to put our money and our time and our effort into the building, and we really enjoy. I handle most of it, and I really do enjoy this whole prospect and the tenants, and we rent to a lot of really, really good people. So it is not only a better option for us as a business and investment, but I think also for the Munichburg area, because I think it's reasonable to say that when you have an apartment and you have residents that are living in there and that are staying, they're frequenting those businesses and restaurants in the area and spending money, and that's great for the community, it's great for the economy, as opposed to having another empty commercial space that isn't generating any income for anyone and creates an impression that the place is not flourishing, if you have empty spaces. So, my husband and I believe that rezoning is the best route for this property. We appreciate your kind consideration of our application. And for rezoning, our proposal for this structure really doesn't injure any of the other property owners in our little corner. In fact, there are 4 buildings there. The other property owners are all Zone C2, but the structures are totally used as residential. None of them have any store frontage in those buildings. So we're really kind of in line with what's going on there on that corner. Just it doesn't change any of the easements or the rights of way on the property that already exist. It's not detrimental to public welfare. It doesn't negatively affect any of the improvements in the neighborhood that have been previously made, or for the future plan. And I think Eric had mentioned it kind of supports that whole comprehensive plan that's already in place. So, and then in fact, the improvements that we intend to make, I think, will benefit the area by providing property that has been lacking an attractive aesthetic quality for quite some time. So, you know, like I said, I appreciate you all looking at our application and learning about this process. It's been very educational, and I'd be glad to address any other questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for being here this evening, and I want to say thank you so much for the time and the detail that you put into the criteria responses, because this is unbelievable, and I can tell that you put a lot of time into it, so thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have been in the building, both in the lower and the upper portions of the building. Have visited it when I had friends that attended the church that was in the lower, and then we had folks that did yoga upstairs.
Oh, okay.
Before.
Yeah, I remember
and I
that.
will tell you that the space is just not conducive for commercial use. It just really is not, but it's a great location. The property needs a little bit of work, so I'm glad to hear that you want to fix it up and make it really nice. You know, I was really concerned when the Family Dollar left the area that we would see more, you know, of an exodus from that area, and so I'm really pleased to see that you want to help continue to develop that area and bring people in. I think we all know that we lack, you know, apartments and adequate housing, and so thank you very much for doing that. And I think that with you trying to do the one bedroom, you're looking at an individual or maybe a couple.
Right.
And so you're going to have maybe a 1 or 2 car situation.
Correct.
And that's going to be perfect for the 2 spots in the front, the 2 in the back, and then if they have visitors, they could park on the side.
Right.
So it's really perfect for that. It's really not a good commercial use.
Yeah, right. I'm hoping too that it will help the businesses that I do have in commercial frontage to be able to use some of those other spaces, so if they have some overflow for their customers. But you know, we'll kind of try to work that out so they can use those spaces too, you know, during business hours anyway.
Yeah.
So that's my intention. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else present who would like to speak in favor of this request? Anybody? Seeing none. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition of this request? None. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this request? All right, seeing none, we will now close testimony, and Courtney with the staff report, please.
Okay, so for looking at this particular proposal, there were an analysis done, and so
Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
Move to recommend approval to the city council of the request to rezone the property consisting of the .05 acres from C2 to MU1.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay.
And so, yeah, that'll proceed on. There's 2 dates up there on the screen. The first one is typically just an introduction. And so I think I discussed with you after, or that you'd probably want to be present at the second meeting there on August 15th. And certainly if you have any questions, feel free to give either Courtney or me a call. So.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll move on to Eric for other business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, for the, is there a slide for other business? Yep, staff updates on prior cases. And so the last case from the last meeting, which was 2 months ago, was the Autozone proposal out at Eastland Drive, right there beside Gerb's, there in the shopping center. It was a combined subdivision plat, a 1-lot, well, I guess it was a 2-lot subdivision to divide that property, and then a PUD plan for the specific layout of the Autozone. And that matter was approved at the city council level. The subdivision plat has been finalized. We haven't received any final PUD plan. That's the what's reviewed administratively by staff. But we look forward to receiving that at the staff level, and hopefully that'll proceed on. But was approved. The next item under other business is election of officers, and so this occurs yearly at the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's usually scheduled for June. We didn't have a June meeting, and so here we are. It's really up to the commission on how to proceed with that. Typically, if there's any nominations or consultations with the existing, but to proceed with the election.
So if you want to get rid of me, now's the chance. Hank?
Yeah, so currently, and certainly we have some new members, just as a reminder. So first, it's, yes, Mr. Vaughn is the chair, and Penny Quigg is the vice chair. Alternates are not eligible to be appointed to the positions, and so.
Am I allowed to vote for myself? I probably could.
In elections, yes.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, you're a member.
Yes, I'm willing to stay in this position. Penny? Okay.
Do we
Guess
need
it
a
depends on
second, or
everybody
did you
else.
second? Do we need a second, or did you second?
Yeah, second.
Second, I'll second.
Okay. Oh, Fretwell and Hawk. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you call a vote?
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. It's 12 years now, 13 years. It's a long time. It's been a while.
Oh, yeah, I think last time I looked at the list, I think you're on your 3rd term, aren't you?
Yep.
You got a few years left,
Yep.
but, you know. Terms are 4 years. You do not start counting terms as an alternate, so it's only once you get appointed to a regular position for a full term. If you get appointed to a partial term, it doesn't count. And so, Mr. Deacon recently, well, before he got elected, he was gonna retire out of the Planning and Zoning Commission after having served as a member for I think it was something to the order of 16 years. So.
Question. So when my term is up, can I go back to being a commissioner or an alternate?
No, I don't believe that you'd be eligible to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission, but we typically open up the opportunity for retiring members to switch to the Board of Adjustment, and vice versa. So if you're considering what to do in the future.
I had another question too. What was it? It'll come to me, I'm sure.
So I was going to take the podium for this one. I have a handout. I will apologize in advance. The handout is very small print, and I'll describe what it is. It's under the category of first, the important stuff. Anna Nanoski is having a baby shower tomorrow. Okay, yes, there is a contingent that is going up there to help her celebrate. And so that's, it's been a year since she left, and finished off the comprehensive plan right at the end of her career here. And we are familiar somewhat with what she's been up to in Kansas City. Some exciting work. Of course, there's a lot more activity there. They have a planning and zoning department. I forget. Sonny, do you know how many people? It's like 40 or 50 people in their planning and zoning department. So completely different realm. And so, oh boy, I think their meetings are all-day affairs, like weekly. They have lots of meetings. They go on for a long time, and yeah, completely different world. And so it is interesting to get that perspective from her. And and certainly very, very happy for her. She's moved her career in that direction and growing her family. And so, but I will use that as an example. Her departure is, we have not, at the planning staff level accomplished, what we would like to, within a year with respect to the comprehensive plan. It's been a rough year. We're still, especially, toward the end of last year, COVID was resurging, and we had limited staff, and we just haven't had an opportunity to pursue a lot of the things we would like to do at the staff level. However, it was basically an item within the comprehensive plan to give a yearly update to the Planning and Zoning Commission on the items that are contained in the comp plan. The comp plan actually had a format for how to give that update. I've deviated from that, and I apologize also that even in the preparation of the report to the Planning and Zoning Commission, given more time, I would like to probably do it a little bit different. But I still wanted to try to keep with the schedule and give you some sort of update with the comp plan today. And so this is the handout I've prepared. It's basically my tracking sheet for items, the strategies that are contained in the comprehensive plan. I've divided them up quite significantly from the way they're laid out in the comprehensive plan into how I kind of envision they fit within, kind of an implementation category at the city level. Dividing them into different categories, you'll see, right there, the city policy type items. Cross references to other plans, economic development items, some education and marketing, things that are just general public involvement type items, major projects, public works types things that are targeted toward parks. And then, you have to get, into the fourth page before we get into the planning, the things that are, really fall within our division a little bit more, and CAMPO-oriented, CAMPO being our transportation planning organization here for the Jefferson City area, land use policy, and straight-up code amendments. And so, as even referenced at the time of the adoption of the comprehensive plan and the discussions leading up to it, it's not, the comprehensive plan is not purely a city, a planning and zoning staff type of document. It's meant to be broader, and a lot of the recommendations that are contained in it are, quite frankly, would be implemented by other agencies, or other departments or other divisions. So it's not necessarily a to-do list for the city planners, is I guess what I'm saying. There are several categories here that fall pretty squarely in the planning staff realm, but there are a lot that fall in other areas. And so I was hoping to just touch on maybe a few of the major items as I scan down the list. With respect to some of the city policy, the items in the city policy category. A lot of that is targeted toward things that maybe are already being implemented, already being done at the decision-making level. There's one in particular, the item D2, where the encouraging intergovernmental partnerships. The city and the county already work together on a lot of different projects. And a recent example of that is just this morning, there's a presentation made about an economic development project out in the Algoa area for a transload facility, if you're familiar with that discussion. And it's a project that is basically being headed at the county level because they own the rail line out there, but it would be a railroad spur that would allow for businesses to be able to load directly onto rail cars, have that rail access at a publicly owned facility. And so that's one example, but even in the use of the various sales tax monies and such like that, there's often a lot of partnerships that go on with the city, between the city and the county. Another item I'll point out, it's closer down to the item of B4 on that list. It's regarding improving telecommunication infrastructure. Boy, you don't have to drive around town much to see all the fiber being installed all around town. Boy, it's tearing up some yards. But there's in addition to fiber being installed, throughout the city or in various areas of the city, some of the recent cases at the Planning and Zoning Commission have been for cellular tower type things, the small cell structures that are being put up, and AT&T, seems to be kind of methodically establishing small cell locations within the community and improving that type of structure.
May
Yes,
I
sir.
expand on that a second?
Yes, please.
Also, in the broadband world, it also ties into the item D2 in terms of working with other governmental agencies. Working with Midmo GIS and the Economic Development Administration and Luke Holtzschneider with JC Rep, we have a grant to be able to do a small fiber study, a planning activity. We've contracted, Minmo RPC's contracted with an engineering firm to help us put together a survey so all the citizens in the community can give us feedback on terms of how fast their internet speeds are so we can apply for one of these larger broadband grants through the state that the state's about ready to release here in August. So that's an example of working with the JC Rep, working with Minmo GIS, and a grant funding source. So that's kind of exciting. You'll hear more about that in the future when those surveys come out, but that's a good example of how this keeps building upon itself.
Going down to the next kind of general category, I have titled cross-referenced other plans. There's 3 entries there. I'll touch on each one of them. One of them is in regard to historic, districts or historic preservation, and there's currently a committee formed to do an overhaul review of historic districts and the code that would establish them and support them. And so that's an ongoing work. Also, there's one item that has come out of that committee regarding historic legacy districts, establishing historic districts that are more for past events that have occurred in an area. Particularly, the example there is the Foot on Lafayette Street, which does not exist anymore, but it's very important to many members of the community to recognize that area. Another item is in respect to stormwater and stormwater planning. That's been a pretty major item of discussion, going back many, many years, in fact, at the city level. But I think it's recently got a lot more discussion, particularly with respect to the various funding opportunities that have come down from the federal level, and perhaps directing a lot of that money in the direction of stormwater. ARPA funding, for example, is a pretty major item of discussion at the city council level and how to use that money. I believe some of that discussion is pointing toward a stormwater type direction, but so. And then another one there, a lot of the entries on this list will reference Campo. Again, that's the transportation planning organization for Jefferson City that's housed within the same division. I'm the manager of that. And at the Campo level, we've put a lot of work into establishing priorities with MoDOT, particularly unfunded transportation projects, both road and bridge type projects, but also multimodal type projects. At the very top of that multimodal list is the need to to rebuild our airport tower. If you're familiar with that airport tower, it's almost comical. It was built as a temporary structure in, I think, like 1950, 60 or something like that. Something built as a temporary structure, and we're still using it today. The good news is that it looks, I believe the funding is in process for that, and so hopefully there will be good news to publish in that regard in the near future. Regarding education and marketing, I think we have a lot of work to do, and so there's really no entries there. I think there is some of those items that planning staff can undertake or participate in, or discuss with others, along with general public information or public involvement type categories. I'll say that public involvement in the planning field is, well, the two are kind of linked, and so a lot of the meetings we have generate public interest, and a lot of the other projects we have generate public interest. I'll say like at the Campo level again, we're getting ready to undertake what's called an active transportation plan, a bicycle and pedestrian type plan. And there's a lot of interest from members of the community in that. There's a lot of interest in improving recreation and sidewalks in the area. And so that entry by itself, I think, is elsewhere on this list. Getting down to the major projects category, I'll touch on two things. The city has explored options in terms of trying to use programs. The reference here is really to land banks, or other programs that might be helpful in acquiring blighted, property. And I get a little out of my realm legally here, but there's a Chapter 353 kind of reference there that is being explored and potentially used. It's very similar to kind of blighting property. I think is maybe a kind of general way of describing some of that. And then another entry there, promoting, development of a convention center. Well, the target for the convention center right now really is the MSP redevelopment site, and that is still progressing. And the next category, I'll touch on public works. I'll just touch on the one thing there regarding improvements to the JeffTrans system. They have undertaken a pretty major study, a transit facility study. They're still finalizing the last details on that, getting that together. But it's basically a study that looks at where to relocate the transit facility, the bus stop, or the main bus, where the buses are operated out of. If you're familiar with that location right now, it's a very old building. If I've been on the tour, the dispatchers operate out of what was a broom closet many years ago, and it functions, but it's in need of something different there. Going down the parks category, there has been a lot of progress in terms of parks and park planning within the community. The Parks Department's been phenomenal in kind of methodically going through their parks master plan that was developed several years ago, and improving facilities. We have I'll use the word phenomenal again, amphitheater, where there's serious talk about, some major names presenting there and serving, to the community. Also with the Adrian's Island access, which was kind of a straightforward item to improve access to and recreational uses along the river. This is a thing that's identified as being an asset that's not very well utilized at our city level. Continuing on, getting into the planning field, or the planning category. And so some of the reporting there, Again, some of it, points back toward Campo. There's a, kind of the desire to improve some of the commercial corridors through the community. Well, Missouri Boulevard is at the top of that list. There's two ways to think about Missouri Boulevard, improvements. One is in the traffic situation, but also, you could think about it in terms of the view, how the boulevard looks along its length. And so I think there's two different entries within this list, kind of one, improving corridors, commercial corridors, and then also, improving traffic situations in commercial areas. And at the Campo level, we really recognize that there's a lot going on Missouri Boulevard, and at that level, our priority, basically the unfunded need at that point, is to establish some sort of Missouri Boulevard corridor study. We really need a professional look at the boulevard to determine where the issues are and how they can be improved. And more than likely, something like that would be along the lines of a consultant-led study. So.
Eric, real quick,
Yep.
on the Missouri Boulevard issue, if that were the case, is that going to be a collaboration between the city and the state?
So Missouri Boulevard is a state highway.
Right.
And so when we talk to MoDOT, about priorities, that's, it's a relevant reference to them to say that, we'd like to see a corridor study along this boulevard. So yeah, definitely it would be a definitely there would be involvement from both sides. How a plan or something along those lines comes to be is probably a separate discussion. The funding discussion basically. But yes, it is a state highway, and so. Another entry I'll touch on here regarding downtown, and so we. One effort that we did undertake over the past year was trying to engage the Downtown Association, the Downtown Board, with discussions regarding an overlay district in the downtown area. I gave several presentations in front of the downtown, the association and board, to that regard. I also presented to this body what it would have been about 6 or 8 months ago, and I'll say that it's the concept has been out there for a long time. It is something that I think most people recognize as something that's needed, but there's also a lot of fear there about what the ancillary effects of such an overlay district in the downtown area might cause. There's a strong desire to not negatively affect businesses in the area and the ability of business activities to take place there, and so. We can still proceed with a downtown overlay district discussion. A lot of our staffing doesn't really support our ability to do what would really need to be done at this point, and that is a very intensive kind of public involvement process with the downtown property owners and the community at large in order to really gauge support for something along those lines and make sure that what's being proposed is reflective of what the people and the property owners want. To be kind of honest, right now we don't have the ability to undertake that type of process right now. Our efforts at the staff level are with respect to longer range planning, the big projects, really directed toward that active transportation plan right now that I referenced. And so we've pushed it to the back burner, so to speak. It's still there. If there's a lot of the recent desire to move in that direction, I think, was caused by a collapsing building in the area. The city has acquired that property and so has control over that. I don't envision any new buildings being constructed in the downtown area that would really be a or anything occurring that would be in conflict with the current kind of architectural design within the area. So basically what I'm saying is there's not an urgent need to establish this, and we can give it a little bit time until we have the proper resources to devote to it.
I have a question about that lot real quick. I know that it was on the market not too long ago. And then is it off the market now?
Sonny, do you know the status on that? Sorry,
Because I
we
saw
don't-
it on the
we don't-
market, then it was off the market, so I was like, oh, maybe somebody bought it, but the city was selling it, correct? Yeah, and then it just went off the market. So it wasn't part of the staff involvement in, like? Oh, okay. Oh, well, probably better that oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe we didn't, what responses we got were not, we didn't deem them as very attractive to pursue, so that's why we took it off for now. Yeah.
Okay. Next entry there. Hey, there's a desire for gardens. It's kind of a common thing, especially in underutilized areas. The good news is I think we got one in. Is that still moving forward on Mulberry Street? And so, community garden. And so, yeah, it's one of those things. There's all sorts of very small and very large things contained in the comp plan. The next category I've labeled Campo, things that are kind of directly involved in that Campo realm. And there's, we at the staff level have given a lot of focus and attention to transportation priorities at that MoDOT level. And and so as I report that we haven't accomplished as much on the planning and zoning side, I'll say on the Campo side, I think we've been very successful in establishing priorities for the Jefferson City area within the MoDOT processes that are geared toward that. Specifically, I talk about a document called the High Priority Unfunded Needs. This is produced by MoDOT. It's on their website. It covers the entire state. And if you look through that document, you'll see Jefferson City very heavily represented. On the highway and transportation side, there's a couple of major intersections, and the Highway 50 expressway just on the south side of downtown that's reflected there. On the multimodal side, there's essentially entries for every form of multimodal transportation. That's aviation. The airport is represented in several regards. Transit, with the new transit facility being needed. A rail, with an Amtrak station being really needed for the area. If you're familiar, it's being operated out of a mobile home right now. Good news is, and I haven't followed up on the news, and it just occurred. I still haven't followed up on that. Is that apparently there's something that's been done in that regard of funding for an Amtrak station, and then. River transport, the port. The port, I think, is shifting locations. They're still trying to find the proper location for a port facility for Jefferson City, but it's still something that's being actively pursued. And continuing on under the category of land use policy, both of those entries are really things that the purpose there is, and they're often, in a lot of staff reports, they're reflected within staff reports. These are, things that are used in decision making by this body on rezoning decisions and such. And so that's really where those entries are. There's not any particular action to occur there, except to use those in zoning decisions. Well, I say there could be some some pursuit in where to locate major commercial areas, for example, the big box retail and medical park entries. And so I'll look at that a little bit more. And then getting to code amendments. One entry there that we've made some progress on was in the field of CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. That's something that I'll say is somewhat new within some of the planning field, is trying to design buildings and sites such that they don't encourage crime and ideally support less crime for the area essentially. And so there's certain principles there. Some cities actually have ordinances passed that require certain things that kind of along those lines. I don't envision that here in Jefferson City that would be a route that our community would go. It's a very small number of communities out there that have done such things, but it is very useful in general discussions with potential developers and things like that, and reviewing site plans and building plans. That minor changes can sometimes be made, based on principles, of recognizing ways to not encourage crime in an area or on a site. And so I forget the organization that helped sponsor. Oh, dang it. I feel guilty too. But we partner with another organization that was actually sponsoring SEPTED training, and got a number of city staff members signed up on that training, a very intensive type of, something on the order of 40 hours of virtual training. And so there's several staff members that are working their way through that. The next page, zoning code amendments. There is another entry there, basically in response directly to
Excuse me, Eric.
Yes.
I would like to give credit to the RACS group.
Yes.
To thank them for the training they provided for us for crime prevention activities.
Yes. Yes, is that organization. Again, I'm embarrassed that I forgot their name, but actually, it kind of blocked their name out. They operate an important function there, but they sometimes don't necessarily want to be on the the spotlight on them. But and so there's another entry there for the downtown, and I'd reiterate that we're still kind of gauging the feeling and could move in that direction again in the future. Another entry regarding the historic district code rewrites, and some efforts that are being led largely by our neighborhood services division, and working with trying to establish some good historic district code. Under the sidewalk planning category, you'll see that there's all manner of kind of non-motorized transportation referenced there, and that's really where that active transportation plan that we're pursuing at the Campo level comes in. And so we really look forward to engaging the community through that process. And then turning to the last page, a couple of staff functions. These are things that we felt important to have within the comprehensive plan, but we basically do on a day-to-day basis anyway at the staff level. For those of you who don't know, we conduct pre-development meetings with developers all the time, and everything from from people wanting to convert buildings to 2-unit residential uses, all the way up to big box retail, potentials, people looking at sites and such. Some of these don't ever come to fruition. Some of them do. Some of them require zoning actions. Some of them require Board of Adjustment actions. Many of them don't. But we like to think that we do a pretty good job of customer service with the development community in that regard. And then the last one is a community function. There's plenty of opportunity, and I think that many of the organizations within the community are pursuing ways to better the Jefferson City area. And so some of their thoughts are contained within this comprehensive plan document, and there's many many organizations that are working toward things that are on this list, and whether they know it or not. That is my report on the comprehensive plan. At the planning staff level for the future, really, as I'm the manager, the target is probably code amendments, specifically within the development codes, the subdivision code and zoning code, and then to keep our development codes relevant, and then also rezoning proposals to try to align our zoning map with the future land use map to a better regard, as kind of evidenced by the case this evening, that there are potentially new zoning districts that need to be created in order to really realize other mixed use areas, but then also areas that need to be rezoned so that they better align with the use of the area. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and take any thoughts that you have.
So I just like to say I appreciate the update I was on planning and zoning for many years and don't remember ever having an update on the comprehensive plan. I think it's, yeah, good.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to be doing in the background. So, yeah, definitely having to deal with your regular job and then working on the comprehensive plan is a lot of work. So, appreciate it.
Thank you. So we do have one case for the agenda next month. And so we will have a meeting next month. And we might try to put, again, some of that staff-initiated stuff on the agenda, workload permitting. But other than that, we'll be here next month. So
Sounds good. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. I'd like to thank or congratulate Lisa on her first meeting. She did a great job keeping me in line.
Dale, I have a question.
Yeah.
Does this commission have any kind of attendance policy?
I was looking at that earlier. I don't know.
I know that this and the Board of Adjustment is by state statute, correct?
I could certainly look into that for you, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
I think that's correct. I was just curious. I mean, if you, because our attendance is reported, and we have people that, I mean, I know everybody has to miss now and then, but we have people that haven't even been here for a third of the meetings. And it just makes me question their commitment.
And so I believe that there is an attendance policy in the city code for all boards and commissions. And so there's that. No, city code, I'm pretty sure. I have looked it up before. I don't recall the specifics. I mean, the topic has come up. Yeah, Blake has been absent a lot. Blake has also told me that I believe his plans are to be moving out of the city, and so he's assuming those are realized, he's on the verge of resigning, from the commission, and so outside of that, I'd say in general, when compared to the other boards and commissions, I'm not aware of the planning and zoning commission members having a worse attendance record when compared to other boards and commissions. Respectfully, we grill you pretty hard on attendance, and so many of the instructions to Lisa and her predecessors are to make sure we establish a quorum, in fact, a quorum plus one, and so a lot of that is kind of reflected in that, and so certainly appreciate your service and your attendance and taking your time to consider the important items that get placed in front of you.
So we have an answer for you. Everybody is supposed to attend at least 2/3 of their meetings, but also if they miss 3 meetings in a row, their position is essentially deemed vacant. And that 2/3 is over a 12-month period. I don't believe it does. It says it's deemed vacant. So it's self-enacting.
Well, so there's that reference in the city code, and I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
It's 7-2
2/3,
for anybody who wants to read it. Yes, it's deemed vacant, so
So what does that entail for our role we have here? Then there's several that have missed 3 in a row, we know. So are they no longer notified, or are you going to have to go to the council to get them reappointed, or what's the next, I mean, so that we're,
1 second. All right, so this is a little bit confusing, and I apologize, but we just realized this is what it reads. Essentially, you're supposed to attend at least 2/3 of the meetings. It also reads that if you miss more than 2/3 of the meetings, or if you miss 3 consecutive meetings, your seat is deemed vacant. So it's self-enacting. We don't have to take action. We can just ask that those seats be filled.
So legally, they would still have that seat unless they asked to be removed, or?
No.
No.
No, they are deemed vacant.
Okay, so
It
if,
reads as it's self-enacting, we don't have to take any action to vacate that seat.
so if somebody, say we don't pay attention to that and somebody's missed 3 in a row, correct? And then their seat's deemed vacant and then they come back and they vote, technically their vote wouldn't count legally.
That is a more complex question. If we don't take some action to replace them, I mean, theoretically, they shouldn't be considered part of the board any longer.
Right.
That is probably a more complex question that I'll have to ask and talk to Ryan about to see how he wants to handle it, because it's pretty ambiguous. It could go either way.
Right.
You know, we could say, okay, whatever, no action was taken against you, so go ahead and
Right.
vote because you're part of the board. Or we could say it's deemed vacant, so you're no longer part of the board. You shouldn't be getting notices. You shouldn't be showing up.
Right. But hypothetically, if somebody was voting that had a seat deemed vacant, like later on down the road, and then somebody brought it up and was like, well, he wasn't.
If that was a situation that was occurring tonight, and then this question was being posed, I would probably ask them to recuse from voting until we could determine the
Good question, Penny.
approach we want to take.
Coming from somebody with perfect attendance.
It doesn't. It's there. Yeah, there's an or function. There's an or function in this, so it's 2/3 or miss 3 consecutive meetings. So those 3 meetings are also enough to vacate that seat.
I guess we'll have you check into it and then, yeah, come back to us and see. Yeah.
It'd be a rolling 12, so it would be 2/3 in any 12-month period. So, yeah, it's not necessarily a calendar year. It's just an ongoing 12 months. If it ever accumulates to that point, which I don't know how you could do that without missing 3 in a row, but you see what I'm saying.
Does anybody else have any comments on that? Anybody else got any questions? Good question. Okay. I declare this meeting adjourned.